beautiful souls, and welcome back or welcome to my podcast, Rewire to Inspire. I am your host, Jessie Brown, and I am very excited to be jumping on the microphone with you all for episode number 207. If you missed my last episode, number 206, we talked about why it's important to know what your triggers are. Talking about triggers is definitely one of my favorite concepts in the whole wide world, because I think and I believe that once we have an understanding of what our triggers are, it's one of the most empowering feelings, because when you learn what it is that kind of sets you off and disrupts your natural flow of life, it can just allow you to work towards having a more balanced, fulfilling life, because you have a little bit more control over the things that can influence you. So if you haven't checked out that episode, I definitely encourage you to. For today's episode, you guys, I have not been this excited to record an episode in a really, really long time. Today's episode is one that I'm like, I just want to pour from my heart into you, and I want my words to just speak directly to you and to your heart and to your subconscious, because I want you to know that we're not perfect. Nor are we supposed to be. We do not have to have it all figured out. I'm so sick and tired of seeing all these posts on social media and comparison, and just seeing all this bullshit thrown in our face of what our life should look like, where we should be, that none of us struggle and we all have it figured out, which is such a lie. And I'm sick of the lies, and I want to talk about the truth and be transparent about things that I struggle with on a day-to-day basis, but that I'm working on. And so I want to validate that you do not need to be perfect. You do not need to be perfect for anybody. Being yourself and feeling your feelings and feeling the emotions that come with struggle and with overcoming things in life is what makes life beautiful. And I'm so sick of all these false expectations on self-improvement podcasts that are just, like, figure it out and do this and read this book and like blah blah blah, you can excel your life and have it all figured out. And it's like, I hear a part of that, and I'm definitely a very ambitious person who takes pride in trying to peak perform my life and have things organized and have myself put together and those things. But there's a lot of things that I don't have put together, and I'm learning to just accept that that's okay. And the more that we normalize that those things are okay, while holding the duality of still working on them. I'm not saying any of these points to say, well, we should stop working on them because that it's okay to not be perfect. But instead, give us permission to be gentle with ourselves as we figure it out. So I wrote down 10 things that I am working on every single day. And as somebody who preaches self-love, preaches mental health, is a huge advocate for mental health and in self-improvement and all these things, these are things that I struggle with sincerely and deeply on a day-to-day basis. And I'm ready to just pave the way to normalize these things and to stop pretending like we're all robots and we don't deal with this shit on a day-to-day basis. As you can tell, and I said it off the get-go, I'm fired up about this topic because I'm just like, okay, I'm ready to be the big sis to anybody out there, or the role model, or just a human being that is willing to come forward and to talk about these things. So blah, 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 blah. Starting my words because I'm so excited. I'm going to take a deep breath and let's dive into these 10 things that I am working on every single day, and I'm sure you're going to relate to as well, and things that it's okay if you're working on these, and I'm right there with you. So the first thing, reminder, that I'm working on is to stop being so mean to myself. As somebody who preaches self-love, like most things in life, when we talk about something, we're passionate about something, there's a reason beneath it. And the reason that I'm so passionate about self-love is because I know so deeply what it's like to be self-critical every second of every day. And I am working towards and have been working towards for years, a relationship with myself where I'm not so mean to myself. But I want to normalize that just because you see someone on social media who's like, look at me and my new outfit and I got it all figured out, I guarantee you that person is very hypercritical of themselves. We can't lose sight of reality that these are things that we all struggle with. And this is something that I'm learning to grapple with myself, is that while I'm being mean to myself, comparing myself to people online, they're likely also being just as mean to themselves. And so that's something that I'm trying to work towards, is less about the external perception and more about, okay, how do I feel within my own body when I talk to myself? How do I feel when I look in the mirror? How do I feel when I have those internal thoughts that come up? How do those make me feel? And so that is the first thing that I want to normalize, is all of us have that internal dialogue. For some of us, it has been wired and shaped to be more hypercritical than others, but we can work on that and we can work towards that. And episode 180 of my podcast is where I shared my keynote that was all about how our internal dialogue shapes our life, the importance of self-love, and that episode dives deep into the impact that our self-talk has on us. So that is the first refreshing reminder, is that you are not alone in the fact that you are mean to yourself. But that doesn't mean that it can't improve and that you can't work on this. And I am right there with you. As a strong self-love advocate, I am also mean to myself and hard on myself. And so you're not alone. It shows that you care. You know, you've maybe been criticized before. You're hypercritical of your environment because you've had to be before. Every action and thing that we do is a byproduct of something that we've been through or have been exposed to. And that's what makes you you, but we can work on that. So let's normalize that. The second thing that I'm trying to work on that I'm not perfect with, and by any stretch of the imagination, is going to bed without my phone in my hand or even in my bedroom. This is something that I've talked about is so bad for you. You know, the blue light and radiation from our phone can interfere with our natural melatonin and natural flow of, getting into our circadian rhythm and all of those things. And so I know that it's not good for me to go on my phone before bed, but sometimes it's also very helpful and it calms me down. But I've noticed recently that I've been waking up at peak times in the night, so between 2 and 3, and I know that that is due to my circadian rhythm being off and my cortisol levels being higher. And so I also struggle with doing what's best for me, even though I know it's what's best for me. So something that I'm working towards and working on is not going on my phone before bed, especially when I'm laying in bed. I can go on it before, but I'm trying to not let it into the bedroom so that it's not interfering with my sleep. But something that, again, I preach, but I don't really practice. And I want to normalize that because I know a lot of us are so guilty of going on our phones until the very last second. But I do also want to raise awareness that it is affecting us and it is affecting our sleep. And I think that it's okay, again, to hold the duality of both of those things. The third thing that I'm working on, and we're all working on, is keeping promises that I make to myself. So if I tell myself I'm going to do something, actually making sure that I'm doing it. Recording this episode, for example, my goal was to do this yesterday, and things had come up, whatever, but I had told myself that I was going to do it, and I didn't do it. And it ended up making me feel really let down by myself. And sorry, if you're watching video, my nose runs constantly. It has for years, but that's a story for another day of what's happening there. But when you tell yourself you're going to do something and then you don't, it breaks the bond with yourself. I've talked about it before. Imagine a friend broke as many promises to you as you do to yourself. You wouldn't be friends with that person for very long. Yet we do that to ourselves all the time. We tell ourselves we're going to go to the gym, we're going to go for a walk, we're going to get that work done, send that email, pay off that debt, whatever. We tell ourselves we're going to do things, and then we don't do them, and then we feel like crap. And so working towards making sure we're honoring the things we tell ourselves just helps us build that better relationship with ourselves. And I put this one on here because this is something that I preach all the time, but I'm not perfect with, and I want to be honest about that. My whole goal of this episode is just being honest about things that I've talked about and that you've definitely seen other podcasters and authors and influencers talk about, but we're not perfect with these things. The amount of times that I've read books from folks and then studied their Instagram and then behind the scenes, and I'm like, you're not practicing what you're preaching, but you're not talking about the fact that you're not practicing what you're preaching. And that infuriates me. When someone's integrity isn't honest, it really bothers me. And I'm like, I need to admit the things that I am not perfect with so that my audience does not feel like they are inadequate in any way because they are not perfect with these things. My friend, I am right there with you. I'm human and I struggle. And just because I know better sometimes doesn't mean I do better. And I think that that's really important for us to have the awareness of. Number 4 is having a secure bedtime. I've talked about this one a lot, about how I try my best to go to bed around 10:30 to again work with my circadian rhythm and set up a routine. Our bodies feed and love routine. But I've been very inconsistent with this, coaching basketball and not getting home until 9 o'clock because me and my partner usually go to the gym after, and then by the time I get home and take a shower and get something to eat and then finally have time to just relax and unwind for a minute, it's usually already 10 o'clock, and then I don't want to go to bed right away because I'm so wired up from the day. And so my sleep routine has definitely taken a hit, and something that I want to say that, again, I'm working on, but it's not perfect, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Being aware of the things that you're trying to improve, even if you're not perfect with it, is already such a huge step and something that you deserve to validate for yourself. Number 5, I've kind of already very briefly touched on this one, but it's not comparing myself to a photo I see on Instagram. I am very largely affected with self-comparison, of thinking, if that person's beautiful, I am ugly. If that person's succeeding, I am failing. If that person has this, that, and the other thing and I don't, I am unsuccessful. Again, I know those thoughts aren't true, and I'm good at rationalizing and, trying to come back to reasoning with myself. But those thoughts sometimes just take over. And we see these picture perfect filtered pictures on Instagram, but our mind doesn't go to that picture's filtered. Our mind goes to their skin's nicer than mine, their hair's nicer than mine. I've talked on here before about my struggles with my hair, of it breaking and completely changing over the last year, and it's something I'm very insecure about. And so whenever I see somebody else with beautiful hair, I'm always just more upset with my hair. And it's something that, again, we don't just talk about these things, but it's something that, my microphone decided to go for a little. My problem is I play with it too much when I'm talking, and I need to just leave it alone. There, let's try there, and I'm not going to touch it anymore. But not comparing ourselves to things that we see on social media, because all it's doing is falsely painting a picture of what our life should look like, telling ourselves that we are not enough based off of something that isn't even true. And so as much as this particular point is very talked about, that don't compare yourself to things you see online, we also subconsciously do it. And we're all very hypercritical on ourselves of what we post on social media. And I've tried very hard to post things online that make me very uncomfortable in the hopes of leading by example of things that aren't really talked about. But it's hard, and it's hard to talk about those things because you just don't want to be perceived in certain ways. But at the end of the day, it's who cares? Who really cares? I adore posts so much more that are raw and vulnerable and talking about struggles than someone who's I'm perfect and look at my house and look at my perfect life. It's not relatable. It's yes, things that we're all striving towards, but at the same time, it's not really realistic. And it's definitely not what goes on behind closed doors. And so something I'm working on is just myself making sure I'm leading by example and posting more things on social media that make me uncomfortable and actually make people think and not just compare to what they think their life should look like. Okay, number 6. This is one that, again, I've been wanting to talk about on social media, but I have a lot of shame around. And something I've only recently started to fully open up and talk about. But it's not labeling food as good or bad. Good or bad, in quotations. I'm definitely someone who, before I consume anything in my body, I'm like, is this gonna make me fat? That is my first thought. And sometimes I still eat it and I don't care. But the fact that I even have that thought is so toxic. It's not, is this gonna fuel my body? Is this gonna nurture me? Is this gonna keep me full? Is this gonna help my brain? It's, is this gonna make me fat? And I know that that is such a toxic thought to have. And I've had a negative relationship with food as long as I can remember. I don't super talk about it because it's something, again, that I'm very, very shameful of, and I just have a lot of protectors around that conversation. And not a lot of people would ever assume that I deal with that. I remember the first time I told some people that I, have experienced an eating disorder and still do in a lot of ways with those mindsets. They were like, whoa, like, you, no way. And it just further made me shameful, because it's like, what do you mean by you, no way? As if I don't look like the type of person that should deal with those things. And so just know that if you're someone who also struggles with labeling of food, of having a hard time with eating certain things and just your relationship with it, know that you're not alone. It's something that a lot of us deal with. Body image is such a huge crisis in the mental health world, and something that's not really talked about. Body dysmorphia, and just how much women and girls deal with their relationship with their bodies, and how we all think we are too big or too small or too this or too that, and never just, we're beautiful, and do I feel healthy? And as much as, again, I'm someone who preaches self-love, I struggle deeply with my relationship with food. And it's something that I'm aware of and I'm working on, but I struggle on a day-to-day basis. And so if you struggle too, you are not alone. Kind of going off of that one, I'm working on not punishing myself or feeling bad for eating what would be labeled as a bad food. And again, there's no good food or bad food. It is all just food that affects our bodies differently, but no food is good or bad. For some reason, the one food that really, really triggers me is bagels. Whenever I eat a bagel, I feel like shit mentally for hours, sometimes days. I got McDonald's like a month ago, one night with my partner, and it was so much fun. It was like 11 o'clock at night. We went and got McDonald's and whatever. And I probably thought about that for 3 weeks of beating myself up for why I shouldn't have done that. And I seen this TikTok one day, and sometimes TikToks are crap, but this one kind of really struck a chord with my heart, and it said, the damage of thinking of, how did it go? The damage of thinking about what a bagel is doing to you versus your mindset around it, or something like that. Basically just saying your mindset around eating the bagel being negative is far worse than the actual calorie or carb intake of the bagel. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm not the only one that has labeled bagels as this very negative thing. And it's just so interesting to me, because it's like, how can I be such an advocate for certain things and feel so strongly about loving yourself? And I sit there for weeks and beat myself up over eating McDonald's and eating a bagel. It's just so messed up. And it's like, all of us do this, whether we admit it or not. It's like, we all deal with this to some degree. And again, maybe it's not around food, but it's likely around something else. And we all have those things that affect us on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm working towards ending punishing myself. So if I eat something bad, not feeling like I need to go on a 2-hour walk to burn it off, or not eat for the next 6 hours because I overconsumed at one meal. It's like I just try to justify for myself eating something that I have labeled as bad. And it's such a toxic thought pattern that I'm really working through. But I want to be honest about that in case anybody else is dealing with that, so that you know you're not alone. Okay, this isn't like the funnest episode, and that wasn't really my goal to have like an upbeat, positive episode, but instead to provide some actual truth around things that we all deal with and normalizing the fact that we all deal with it. And it's like not being naive to these things. It's let's shed light on it and talk about it so that we can work on it collectively instead of protecting ourselves and thinking that others are not like us, which makes us just feel more alone. So a couple more things for you guys. Number 8 that I'm working on is not making assumptions and jumping to the worst case scenario. I am like the queen of perceiving change in behavior, change in voice tone, change in body tone as that person's mad at me. I did something wrong. Something's wrong. And as somebody who grew up, unfortunately, to be on edge a lot of the time, having to predict what the next possible argument was going to be, the next possible emotion that was going to surface, I've gotten very good at being hyper aware of how everybody else is being around me. And my partner is definitely the person that I notice this with the most because I love him the most and I spend the most of my time with him. And if he's just tired or off, like, you know, thinking about work or just whatever, my mind goes, he hates you, he's gonna leave you, you did something wrong, something's wrong, and I just like catastrophize and I'm like, what's wrong? And he's usually like, nothing, I just took a deep breath, or nothing, I'm just tired, or nothing, like I'm just chilling. And my brain's like, okay, yeah, right. But I want us to validate for ourselves that if you grew up in a home where you had to predict the next behavior to keep yourself safe, or you've been in a relationship where that person was unpredictable or, you know, had narcissistic tendencies or whatever, your brain has adapted to think to the worst case scenario to protect yourself. And I want you to know that you're not alone in that, but it's also our responsibility to make sure that we work on that, because it's not my partner's responsibility to always make sure that he's happy and gung-ho so that I'm not triggered. That's up to me to work on. But I just want to validate that if you deal with that, you're not alone. It's something that there I go, I'm about to touch my microphone again. It's like I need to just chill. When I talk about these things, I kind of get flustery because I notice, you know, my nervous system kind of up and down. It's hard for me to talk about these things, especially about my childhood, because these things are hard to talk about. But not making assumptions is one of the hardest things to do, and so we need to challenge our thoughts. You know, do I actually have evidence that shows that he's mad at me, or they're mad at me, or I did something? Did I do something? Is it possible I'm making up a scenario that isn't true? Is it possible I'm focusing on the worst case scenario? And most of the time you probably are. And I do want to validate that there are times that you are correct, and we have to trust that as well. But you're not alone if you're somebody that jumps to the worst case scenario. You do that for a reason, and that's okay. But talking about it and not accusing anybody of doing anything, but instead being able to say, hey, I noticed, you know, your energy shift and I'm just perceiving it this way. I know it's likely just something in me, but I also just wanted to talk about that. And the right person will be there to hold space for you to break that down. And the more that you're able to do that, the easier that it'll get. And sometimes we need to just self-soothe ourselves and say, nope, like, it's okay, I'm fine, I'm safe, I don't have evidence to back this up. This is gonna pass and it's okay. But you're not alone in that. Number 9, trusting that not everyone wants to hurt you. So basically, exactly off of that one, not everybody has negative intentions towards you. I was at Women's League basketball yesterday, and I started to get triggered on the court. And those of you who know me and know my story, you know that I had a basketball experience playing, you know, college level, where it was just very negative. And so sometimes I get triggered on the court if I mess up, or, you know, if I miss a shot and I feel like I let people down, I just really start to freak out. And I thought that this one girl in specific was judging me. And I jumped to a very worst case scenario, and I told myself, next time we're both sitting on the bench, I'm going to compliment her genuinely because she was a phenomenal player, and just say something nice and see how she responds. And so the opportunity came, and I said something to her, and she could not have been nicer in return. And that just showed my brain that I was triggered on something within me, and I projected it onto this person. And so understanding that not everybody wants to hurt you. And sometimes we perceive it in that way because it's easier to self-protect and to point fingers and to blame than it is to turn within and be like, is this something about me that is being poked right now? Is there actually evidence to back up this thought? So if you're someone who's very quick to jump to conclusions and to transfer your own insecurities onto others, you're not alone, but it is our responsibility individually to work on that. But I'm right there with you, and I know that it's hard, and I know that it's so much easier to just think the worst case scenario, because in a lot of ways, when that's what we're used to, there I go, touching my microphone again, when it's what we're used to, it's just easier and it's almost comforting in a way, but it can improve in time. Last but not least, yuck, this one even sounds weird to just say, but I'm working on it and I want us to work on it together, but that's believing that you are enough from the inside out. Trusting that you, as an individual, regardless of your story, regardless of your successes, regardless of your traumas and anything in life, regardless of anything, you are enough. You are enough as you are. External things and successes and pieces of paper do not define you. Your heart and your mind and your character is what defines you and is what makes you whole. I know intuitively that I am enough, but believing it is a whole other story, because believing it means that you're fully admitting it. And that can be scary, especially in a world that tells us believing in ourselves is selfish, right? And so I just want to say that as much as a part of me sometimes intuitively is like, girl, you're enough, you got this, you're worthy, like, you're incredible, whatever, there's also a part of me that's like, how dare you say that? That is not true. You are not enough. You do not have all these things. And it's like, okay, like, relax. But I'm right there with you in those insecurities. So those are 10 refreshing reminders, and also things that I deal with very, very, very often. And if even one of those aligns with you, I'm so happy that you're here, and I'm so happy that you tuned in. And even the fact that you're listening to this episode, I hope that you just take a second to give yourself a pat on the back. The fact that you are choosing in your day to listen to 30 minutes of something that can improve your life, that shows the type of person that you are. And I am proud of you for that. And I hope that you are proud of you for that. And whether you are out for a walk right now, sitting in your office, at the grocery store, at the gym, whatever, I hear you. I see you. I appreciate you, and I'm so thankful for you. And you are not alone. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world if you could send it to someone that you think would enjoy, if you could share it on social media, etc., so we can continue to grow and evolve this amazing family of just folks that are looking towards improving their life 1% at a time, one little bit at a time, and know that it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of work, and the fact that you're here just shows your resilience and your willingness to become the next best version of yourself. And for that, that makes you one hell of a human. So thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. I look forward to chatting with you all on Thursday. Bye, you guys.